Hello there, guys, and welcome back to my channel. Finally, it's been a hot long week since we last were able to stream. My apologies for that, ladies and gentlemen. But we are back talking about not actually Chelsea versus Tottenham or Tottenham versus Chelsea. We will cover a preview for that tomorrow afternoon. So again, get subscribed. Hit the notification button so you don't miss that stream tomorrow afternoon. But what we're here to do today is to talk about basically just the general situation at Chelsea, everything that's come out over the week. And just basically why Graham Potter was not sacked by Chelsea. Because I think even the biggest Graham Potter supporters, even the biggest Graham Potter fans, I'm not even sure if they exist, to be honest, will all be aware that our form is absolutely dreadful. And our form is quite frankly not acceptable. But clearly, we have not sacked the manager anyway. So we'll discuss why we haven't. We'll discuss whether we still should or what needs to happen for us to do so. But the more important question, rather than what we think needs to happen for us to sack Potter, is there such a point for Todd Boehly? Does such a point even exist for Todd Boehly within this season? Obviously, next season is a whole different story. But for this season, that's the part that I'm not sure about at the moment. Everyone says, the next 3 games, but we said that 3 games ago. So how many more times is it going to be the next 3 games? It's a very interesting question. There's a lot to get through. We will also be joined by Charlie in the next 10 minutes or whatever. Hopefully he joins us very, very soon. Dharmesh, I will actually start with you before going to Pice. So thank you for being back on as always, mate. I appreciate it very much. What have you made of this week? It's been another odd one, hasn't it? Because after Saturday, all of us were frustrated. Even I went from somewhat, defending Potter, I think is the wrong word, but more like being hesitant to say, Potter out. Let's wait until we can, make ourselves a full picture of is he good enough or is he not. But what happened on Saturday in the first half was, to me, too bad to be acceptable. There's a process and things take time. I understand all of that. But there is a certain level, in my opinion, that things shouldn't drop below of. And when I say that, I'm not necessarily talking about results. I'm talking about how we're playing, because results have a lot of different reasons for them. You have to do with the opponent, with your injuries, with your form, this and that. Results are, luck as well to some extent. But performance is a different conversation. And that performance in the first half against Southampton, to me, was disgraceful. And it made me lose faith in that. I believe even with given enough time, as much as some people don't think it should even be given enough time, but what changed for me is when now I'm not sure if I believe, or maybe I should say I don't believe, that even with given enough time, it will be good enough, if I'm honest. And then we'll talk about what all the news reports that have come out in the middle of the week. Some people paint it as pure PR, some people paint it as, well, a middle of the two. We'll talk about that. But just in general, Dharmesh, which camp would you say you're in right now? Is it just you just want him out no matter what? Or are you like, well, I want him out, but it's not happening, so I have to just sit here and deal with it? Where do you sit, really?
Yeah, Laurenz, thanks for having me on again, bro. Like and sub to Lawrenz's channel and stuff, get his channel up to more subscribers and that, bro. But yeah, I think I'm more in sort of the second camp. What you said about, I guess I want him out, but at the same time, I just know it's not going to happen. Realistically speaking, unless we're talking off air about a potential sort of relegation placed position that we're in. So say if we're in 17th or 18th, if we somehow drop to then for the next 5 or 6 games, then I could see Potter actually getting sacked. But I think for now, what I've been seeing, what I've been reading, say this past week and stuff, Todd Boehly, they're fully on board with Graham Potter. The stuff on the press conference today as well, they have his full backing. I think Fabrizio Romano posted something as well. I've been relaying just whatever Potter said in his press conference, and the fact that the owners are happy with not happy with the results, obviously, but happy with a Graham Potter being the man to take us forward. But for me, it's just Saturday's unacceptable. We were all here last Friday, man. We were confident, man. We're gonna get a 3-0, 4-0 win. I remember us predicting those kind of wins last week. But it wasn't to be for us. We're just poor. Even the second half, I just thought second half we were a bit better. But then again, were we even that good? Compared to what we've seen of us sort of last season and maybe a few games this season, I didn't think we were that great at all, to be honest. And stems from the manager, stems from the players as well. And I just can't. I'm just. A lot of people say I'm not surprised how bad we are, but I'm actually really surprised of how terrible we were against the bottom of the table team. And they bossed our midfield like anything. Like shout out to Ward-Prowse and Lavia especially. Like they bossed our midfield, man, like completely. And Lavia is a player that I've wanted since sort of the start of the season. I think he'll slot right in as well. Sort of next to Enzo, or maybe like even a squad player because he's still young. I believe he's 21, 22. But yeah, just Chelsea just stressed me out, man. Every single time we play, it's just we can't expect anything, to be honest. Like I know we were here last week saying that we'll win 3-4-0, but when you lose the bottom of the table, you just can't defend that, man. Like Southampton just terrible, man. And yeah, man, as much as I want Potter out, I just don't think it's gonna happen, like realistically. And the options that I've sort of seen personally for me, I don't know if that helps us. I mean, it'll help us get more than say 2 wins in 15, but in terms of like a long-term sort of plan, I just don't see any managers on that will, personally, in my opinion, take us up the league and make us successful again. But yeah, that's what I have to say at the moment, bro.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I mean, it's just a difficult situation. Someone said we're buying Strasbourg. Well, where's that been said? We will talk about that as well. But Pice, let me get to you. A lot of people may know your stance on the situation, but where do you sit? Like, obviously, you know, we know you want him gone after Saturday. Arguably, maybe you wanted that even beforehand. But what's your reaction to it not having it, that it didn't happen really? Like, is it anger at the ownership? Is it just stagnation? Like what was your reaction to number one initially? Obviously, where do you stand in the first place, and then that where you stand wasn't fulfilled, I guess. Like, how would you word things? How would you explain where you sit right
now? Well, I mean, I was absolutely shocked that we lost to Southampton. I genuinely thought we would. I mean, I thought we would smash them, but even a win, you know, just get something on the board. I think we sat here last week and we said, you know, this has to be a win. It absolutely has to be. No one debated that. It wasn't. The scenes that I experienced personally at the game, I mean, like I've had, you know, games in the past where I've been where, you know, they've been booed off at full time, very rarely half time. Like that very, very, very rarely happens. And yeah, I feel like it was just the tipping edge last weekend. I've never seen anything like it. You know, fans were arguing while I was sitting. You know, there was two guys going or wanted to go face off, like square up with each other over Mason Mount. You know, because one guy was behind me. He shouted. Basically, at the end of the game, Mount came to clap the fans, and this older guy was like swearing at Mount, saying, "Get out the club, F off, you know, like 200k a week, you absolute disgrace." And then some other guy got really mad, and they like tried to square off each other, and then loads of people got in the way. And yeah, just in general, there was literally no one, and I literally do actually mean no one, that was supporting Graham Potter at the weekend in the Matthew Harding lower. Like, I was looking around me, bro. People like 10 rows behind me were on their chair, like pointing at him, going crazy at full time. Like, he tried to come and clap the fans, like not like come over, but he was clapping the fans in the like in the middle of the pitch. And as soon as he looked over to the Matthew Harding, and everyone just went absolutely crazy. It was like wow, it was like Rafa Benitez. It was in charge. It was fucking insane. But yeah, for me, I just that for me was it in terms of Potter in or out. I don't think he's up to the job. I hope we can turn it around. I really do, because I don't want to be I don't want to be stuck in this feeling. But I just I don't know, man. I don't think he's that guy personally. Yeah, just down to the little things as well. Like I noticed I think you know, the Daily Mail has reported the same. But when we when Azpilicueta went down and stuff like that, even before that, just like any moment where there was a period of breaking game, Southampton's assistant manager, the first thing he did was get all the players over, and everyone around me was like, "Why is Potter like just stand there? Like, why is he not giving any? Why is he not interacting with the team? Why is he not?" You know, like I don't know. He just stood there for like the whole time, and it was very frustrating to experience personally. And I just want him to change. I want him to change. You know, people say he can't change who he is, but surely he can like change some certain things, like, you know, the on the pitch management. Like, there's obviously that clip where he's shouting Kai, Kai, and he just doesn't get a response back. Like, you know, some of the things I've heard within the squad as well that are just not good. The atmosphere isn't the greatest. So especially when they're not on the training pitch in terms of team meetings and stuff like that, a lot of them are disinterested. And yeah, there's those that are. I can't name any specific names, but obviously players that are not playing are always going to be upset. But there's also some people that are regularly starting that actually like do question whether or not he is the guy. Because I mean, and this was also backed up by the Athletic. They literally said yesterday that you know, there's players in the squad that worry that he can't tactically compete with Pep and Jurgen Klopp. So that's where I sit currently. I'm very concerned. I mean, we'll talk about Tottenham tomorrow. I God hope we win, because we've got another week before, you know, Leeds. So we have to win that game. And I just genuinely, from what I saw, my God, the away fans are arguably worse than the home fans. By the way, the away fans are like the proper core fans. You know, they're our best fans because they're the ones that sing the most as well. And I just fear, mate, if we go to Tottenham and we don't win, I mean, I know Boehly's backing him and all the pictures and stuff, and I don't know how you can like go past that when in the past Boehly's always said, like, there's even an interview that came out the other day back in 2019 when he first tried to buy us. He was like, think of the fans are the center, and if you constantly go to the fans' eye, you can never kind of go wrong. So I just fear that if we lose or even draw to Spurs, you know, like, and this is the thing, like, drawing to Spurs, I mean, away it's not the end of the world, but it is right now. It really is right now, and we have to win, because you'll experience, the fans will sing Tuchel's name, the fans will probably sing Roman Abramovich's name. It was ridiculous, and it will just get worse if he doesn't put a series of wins together.
Just to add to that as well, like it's just mad, because if you see these managers that have sort of come in, like for example, Eric Ten Hag, look how well they played yesterday. Look at sort of Mikel Arteta at Arsenal. Look at Pep Guardiola. Look at some of these managers that have come in, like Pochettino. Instantly within the first couple of games, you can see like a style of play. And I forgot Jurgen Klopp as well. Add Jurgen Klopp to that as well. Initially, like when you watch their sort of first game as their manager or their first couple of games, you can see a style of play like first off. But it's been 3 or 4 months with sort of Potter, and I've not seen any sort of style of play that we have, and it's been that long as on. The fact that he's kind of had a month off with the World Cup as well, which to some extent he should have utilized that time, but at the same time you could argue that it's a completely different bunch of players as well that we've got in terms of the January signings.
I'm personally like most concerned because honestly, like, I like Chelsea, like being an English club, from London and stuff. I've always thought, like, just down the years, like Chelsea fans, like they'd love that like successful English manager. Like they'd love to. Obviously, we had Lampard, but part of the bias was obviously he was a Chelsea legend. But you'd think, like, being an English club, like you think the fans would get behind him. He's English. We're in London. Like there's sort of a fantasy towards that. There always has been. And I'm just shocked with like how. Like they just like, especially like just the people around me, like I constantly take away of it. They don't care about him, and I'm just like, that's that. It's fair enough with our results, but like with everything I've said, like it has shocked me how they just don't actually care about him. Like they don't care.
The one thing I will say though is, have Chelsea fans cared about any new manager within the first 4 months, unless there's been big success? Like, for example, Tuchel within the first 4 months, because everything happened at a different time of the year. We won the Champions League, so obviously by then we cared. But when you have a new manager, it always, until you start being successful, have we cared about any manager? Like, that's what I would say. And I want to take it back to what you said, and I know this was Chelsea 365, Chelsea FC 365 sources and stuff, and I'm not asking you to name any names and stuff. But when I hear things like, the players aren't paying attention in team meetings, and when I hear things like they are questioning, like that also coming from the Athletic, like questioning, is he quite good enough to like challenge Klopp and Pep? What I would like to know is, do these players think that they're good enough to play under Pep? Because like, it's easy, like if you didn't play as badly as you did, Tuchel would still be here potentially. right? So like, nothing aggravates me more than players sitting there. Oh, I wonder if this new guy is good enough when they are the reason that the new guy is even here. And when I hear not paying attention in team meeting, well, then slap them around the face. I'm personally not, like, I don't care who the flip the manager is. You are being paid multiple hundreds of £1,000s a week, basically to pay attention in the team meeting. And you not paying attention, I'm absolutely not having that as a stick against the manager. Absolutely no chance. It's your job to pay attention. It is quite literally your job to listen to what the manager has to say. Whether you like it or not is quite frankly your problem. And whether you think it's interesting or not is your problem. No matter what job any of us do, no matter what job any of us will do in the future or have done in the past, there's going to be parts of it which you don't like, right? And can you then just not do it? Oh, I'm not paying attention. Can you then sit there and blame your boss for it? No, because you have two options. Either you get sacked if you don't do your job, or you do your job. So I despise the fact that people use players' lack of motivation and professionalism as a way to discredit the manager. Now, I understand where you're coming from, and yes, maybe this wouldn't happen on a different manager. It's absolutely fair enough. But the problem here is not that it's happening. The problem here is not that, this manager is maybe a little bit less enticing. The problem here is that players don't understand that they have a level of professionalism they need to abide by. And that's not just talking about fitness. You don't just need to stay in shape. When you're in a team meeting, you need to listen. Like, that's the very, very basics of everything. Like, again, I understand also why we're like, oh, yeah, but this shouldn't be happening on a Potter. And if he was maybe a bit more charismatic, maybe that wouldn't be happening. Absolutely fair. But I still think we're criticizing the wrong person here, though, because I know what you said earlier, Pius, in terms of he can't change who he is, blah, blah, blah. And to a certain extent, obviously, you can. To certain extent, you can't. Like, you are who you are, but obviously you can still adapt how you act. So I agree, he needs to be a little bit different on the sidelines. I personally disagree that he needs to change in press conferences and stuff because, number one, I don't think it matters that much. Number two, be yourself in press conferences. I don't think it's the biggest deal, how you act there, personally. If you get the wins, it's fine. If you don't, it's not. But if you lose your shit constantly in the press conference and you lose all the time, then that's also bad. Do you know what I mean? So there is no right way of acting in a press conference. It's only right if the results, go along with it. That's the only way.
Yeah, I just want to clarify as well what I said earlier about, them, or what's described to me as like being disinterested. They're not like. There's no one, as far as I'm aware, that's being like actively disrespectful towards Graham Potter. But it's almost like picture yourself, like say you was holding a talk in a room and you've got everyone sitting around you. Like it was described to me as just being very sort of glum and just sort of like there's no like real atmosphere. Like it's kind of like they're showing up for the team meetings because they have to. Like they're not really interested in like the tactics, or they're not really. I don't know whether that's just
probably why we're not seeing a style of play.
And that's and the guy I was speaking to at the start was saying this is a problem on the pitches because even some of them at a start, and you've got some players that apparently are just like there's a few of them that are really like they're optimistic for the future. They feel like this bad run is a part of the process type thing, and then there's others that are just like this guy after Tuchel, like really like. Because I've been told several times a lot of the players do miss Tuchel, and people are like, well, how can that be true? Because clear, I thought I got told he lost the players, but I'm just going off what I'm told, and I'm not Fabrizio Romano, but I do believe the people I'm speaking to, and I think we have to stick together through this run. But I just find it very, very hard to at the same time because I think every fan is entitled to their opinion, and I think just like the fan base is split, I think the players are split as well. There's certainly players in there that don't believe that he's the guy, and there's so many questioning their futures. We know this anyway. Like, but yeah, just
the only problem I guess with that is us fans can't control the results changing. The players can, and what we all need, the players and the fans, to have belief again is the results changing. So that's where it's the fans they can have their opinions, but we can't control what happens.
And that's the issue.
So that's why they need to just force themselves to.
That's the issue because like a lot of these players have egos, and even though they'll they like playing football, they'll try and win games. It's like I just worry that there's not that level of motivation there. Like because of where we are, like, and this is why I feel like we played so well against Dortmund as well, because in the Champions League, like, and this was a problem under Tuchel as well for periods. He moaned about, like, motivating the players and stuff, and
Not
I guess
just Tuchel. We go back multiple managers.
Yeah, like that.
Sorry,
That is,
Conte, Lampard as well. Yeah,
that is part of the process of getting these guys out. But for the immediate future, I'm just a bit worried that they're not buying into what he's saying. Like, one of the phrases that was used to me was like going in one ear and going out the other type thing. Like, it's like taking information in and then just like 10 minutes later, like, oh, what did he say type thing, that sort of thing. Like it's confusing, but just like not really. I don't know. They're not clicking. They're not like on the same page. A lot of them. So that's an issue.
I hear it, and while I understand some of it, why it's happening, I still think it's something that shouldn't be happening from the player sense. Like, you shouldn't sit in that team meeting and have it go in one ear and out the other. I personally don't think it should happen. Before I get to your super chat, Jess, and I will get to it. We will talk about that in a second. Let me get to Charlie. First of all, thank you for joining. We were supposed to have Bertram on, but then his internet in Denmark is all sorts of madness. So now we got Charlie back on. Appreciate it very much, mate. Before we go into more details and talk about the super chat and other things that have come out over the weekend and today, what is your stance? Where do you sit right now? I asked Armesh, I asked Pice before you joined. Where do you sit at the moment? Because, as much as, people in the chat stop defending Potter, I mean, maybe you're basing that still off what I was talking about still last week and stuff, but I'm probably less so in the corner of Potter than maybe Charlie is at the moment, because mate, we're talking 2 wins out of 15. The form is so bad. The results are so bad. And that performance in the first half against Southampton was so bad. It is difficult to back. Like, very much so. I'm just a little bit different in compared to Pies, where I'm like, okay, well, he wasn't sacked. So now I'm not just going to sit there and shout sack him all the time, because I'm like, well, that's pointless. If we then get a bad result Sunday, I will be like, well, this is unacceptable, blah, blah, blah. But then when I hear he's not getting sacked, well, I just don't think I don't want to create that kind of environment where I'm like, I don't like it when the fans make, like, to a certain extent, obviously to some things it's needed, like say European Super League, but when, like, we are not involved in everything and we don't know the reason for every decision. So that's why I don't think the fans should influence decisions that we don't have all the information on. So that's why I can voice my opinion, but I don't think it should go to the extent where it becomes toxic and the toxicity itself forcing a decision, because I don't think that's beneficial to anybody. Because then you get rash decisions, because if they sack someone and then, on the basis of fan pressure, get a new manager, and then maybe that's still not the right manager because it was all done under pressure rather than an actually well thought out move, I don't think that leads us to anywhere positive. So that's why I do it differently. Again, I'm not telling anyone how they should do it. It's just how I do it. But Charlie, where do you sit at the moment with Potter, with him not being sacked? Should he be sacked? Where do you sit?
Like, I'm desperate for him to do well, like I am for any Chelsea manager to do well. But at the same time, and I've been more lenient and more pro him than a lot of other people have, but I've got to see something to buy into and something to, like, cling on to for me to back. I can't just come on here and blindly back him with no signs of progress just because I want him to do well. You have to give me something for me to continue to back, just something to hang on to. Like, even if it's a few positive results here and there, a few like decent performances, or, some obvious patterns of play or stylistic improvements and things like that. And I'm not seeing that yet. But at the same time, like, I'm not going to tell people how to react, because each person reacts in their own way, and they will react in their own way. And that's the whole point of having freedom of speech, your own opinions and stuff. But for me personally, like, the situation's pretty toxic. I was at Southampton, like Pice was. First time, I think, I've been to a lot of games this season. First time where the stadium turned against him, or a large majority did, in terms of.
Was it a turning against Potter, or was it a turning against
both?
Probably, yeah. I would say both, because we've had the team have been booed before and stuff for poor performances. That will always happen. But I felt like, for me personally, I felt like there were a lot of people on the fence before that Southampton game, and then a lot of people after that came off the fence and were kind of firmly in the out camp, and that's fine. That's your opinion. I've got no problem with that. What I do have a problem with is the fact that the situation is not good right now. And as a collective, as Chelsea fans, we should all want the team and the manager to do well so that Chelsea does well. So for me, if you're like going out of your way to actively, do things like constantly commenting stuff about the manager under Chelsea posts, or just every time you speak, you're criticizing the manager, you're allowed to do that, but it's not conducive to getting where we want to get to. Like, you want the fan base to be united in the same goal for the club to win. And I just think, personally, for me, whether if you think he's the wrong guy, you don't think he's good enough, that's fine. Leave it at that. You don't need to take it any further. Like, I'm more than happy to debate with people whether they think Potter's the right guy, should be sacked or not. The fact of the matter is, he's not being sacked. He's here. So we have to move on, and we have to focus all our energy on supporting the team and getting the best result possible on the pitch, because all that discord in the stands will transmit to the pitch, and we're already low on confidence, and players pick up on that, and it will get even worse. So yes, at the stadium when you're playing shit and it's hard to, and you can't see where a win's coming from. When the team's low as it is, being negative from the stands is just going to make things even worse. Like, I know in the heat of the moment, like I'll be in the away end on Sunday, and if we're losing, I'll be pretty down, and it might be, transmitting negative energy. It's hard in the moment, but you're allowed to do, people are allowed to say and do what they want, but I just personally wouldn't do it that way. I just don't think it's the right thing to do to create make a toxic atmosphere or a toxic situation even worse. Like, I've got no problem with people saying what they want to say and speaking their opinions, but I just personally wouldn't go about doing things
it's your
that
opinion
way.
that certain things should be said and certain things shouldn't be said,
Yeah, right? That's just like how I see it. If people disagree with me, that I've got absolutely no problem with that. But I personally think the right thing to do is to try and get behind the team and get behind the manager as much as possible, even if you don't think he's the right guy. This guy's in charge of the team that we all love. We need to want him to do well whilst he's here. This idea that certain people, I'm not saying any of us or any kind of fans that I know, but this idea that you see people wanting Chelsea to lose so that the manager can go.
It's insane.
There's
literally people out there that want us to lose to Spurs just so Potter gets sacked. You have not understood anything.
Like, Arsenal fans used to do that as well.
Like that, you have not understood anything.
It's utter madness. And whilst he's the manager, I will support him. Whether my belief in him being the right guy changes, I'll still back him because he's in charge of my football team. And I'm not gonna, want him out. And I might want him out, but I'm not gonna go on a outward crusade and waste time in my day and take up energy trying to get him out of the club. What will be, will be. He'll either be here for a while or he won't. And that's just the way it goes. But for me, I think I do, in a way, admire the owners in terms of the fact that they're sticking by him in this difficult time. Because we know full well under Roman, Potter would have been sacked probably, a month ago, probably, at least. He probably would have been sacked 3 times by now. And the fact is that whether Potter's the right guy to lead us forward or not, we're trying to move away from that hiring and firing situation and have a more settled manager and look towards building a longer term thing. And obviously, long term doesn't mean that you just blindly back a manager no matter what the results are. But it means that you stick by them for the time being, and you don't just pull the trigger at the first time of a shit run of form. Because what happens next then? People get their wish and someone else comes in. What? We're going to go through the same process again when they inevitably go I'm not saying it will be as bad as 2-14 or 2-15, but do we then, a new manager comes in, first sign of bad form, do we all fucking throw our toys out the pram and up in arms again? We need to get this guy out because we've gone through bad results. You're going to lose football matches as a manager. We're going to go through bad runs of form. That's going to happen. And if the reaction every single time is to say we need to replace the manager, we're going to go absolutely nowhere as a football club. So we have to move away from this way of thinking and, allow managers time to come out of a spell. You look at Arsenal. I know Arsenal's not the best example, but they were in a similar situation that we're in now. They were hounding Arteta out. And now look, no one says a bad word about him. I'm not saying they haven't really won very much, but there's clear progress and you can see where it's going. And they're probably ahead of schedule in terms of where they want to be by whatever point of time. I don't think in season 3 they were thinking we were going to be leading the Premier League.
Yeah. Can I just
yeah.
jump in on something you just said? Because you were talking about form and like you're going to lose games under any manager. Like it's not just going to go to everything's rosy instantly. And I think a lot of people's response that are against Potter and want him out instantly will say, well, but it's 2 wins in 15 and look at how bad our form is. And that's absolutely valid. But let me just add one thing to that. A lot of the people that are so adamantly for Potter out, that especially that were that before last Saturday, they weren't saying this as we were on 2 wins out of 15. They were saying this as we were in 2 wins out of 4 as well. So that's where that's where the difference comes in. People that have genuinely, arguably like myself, and I don't want to put myself out there as like, oh, I did it the right way, not at all. But I was like, okay, maybe this isn't it. 2 wins in 15. Do you know what I mean? Then you like Pice was talking about this in the group chat earlier. It's like worst form since 1995 or worst win rate since of any Chelsea manager. I'm not sure if ever, but certainly modern that times. That's bad. The problem is the people were as aggressively against him 2 months ago when the results weren't as bad yet, and that's where I think a lot of toxicity comes from. That now people feel justified in what they said 3 months ago. I'm like, no, yeah, maybe it's fine now, but because you've done nothing but harp on about the very same thing for the last 2 months, it's lost any sort of relevancy and any sort of impact what you say to me. Because now at some point I'm going to be like those players where if people just complain about the same thing over and over again, it's going to go in this year and come out that year. And that's what happens when you just become too toxic too soon. Like once certain levels are hit and then we become like, strongly against something, that's absolutely fine. But people do something too soon and then it loses its impact when it actually matters. But I will get your thoughts on a few other things in just a second as well. I do want to react to the super chat here by Jester. And he says, Laurenz, please address this nonsense that Tuchel was fired and Potter was hired because the owners wanted a yes man. Thank you. Now, I agree with Jester that is not what happened. I'm not quite sure how he wants me to, talk about it, but I can't necessarily disprove it because, I'm not there, right? But I personally don't see Potter as a yes man, just because the whole structure, right? Boehly didn't want a manager that's going to be... Because Boehly isn't taking all decisions by himself. Why would Boehly want a yes-man manager? Because he built a whole structure of how decisions are now taken at the club in terms of Paul Stanley and Christopher Vivell and all these guys, forget their names when I try to rattle them off. But there's many people in positions now and them as a collective are supposed to take decisions. So, including the manager. So, if you wanted a yes man, then you wouldn't have built that whole structure, I think. But Pies, I'm not sure if you maybe used it as, I'm not sure if that was as a reactionary term in a reactionary situation or genuinely you meant it. But do you see Potter as a yes man? And if you do, what makes you think that? Because like I say, I don't see how Boehly would benefit from a yes man when he's the one that's aware of himself that he's not the footballing expert, hence why he hired the footballing experts. So why would he want those footballing experts to be yes men? That wouldn't make any sense to me.
I think there's an argument that the people he employed could also be yes man. From what I know,
yes man to who though? Because if they're the ones making the decision,
and Igbali, because they're not making the decisions. Boehly and Igbali are still very, very much high in the decisions. I can tell you that for a fact. They've not stepped back at all. They've not.
But which decisions are we talking about? Like, do you think Boehly and Igbali turned up and where's his name and found this 15-year-old Ecuadorian to sign? I doubt it, mate.
No, but in sense of like if Potter was going to be sacked, right? Boehly and Igbali, they're the ones that make the decisions. All the people below him, like people are trying to act like,
but Potter doesn't need to be a yes man about his own sacking, does he?
No, but like people are acting like, Paul Winstanley and Laurenz Stewart, they're in charge now. Like it's absolute nonsense.
No.
It's nonsense.
I don't think it's about them being in charge, but certain footballing decisions, they're the ones making them. Footballing decisions, like I say, in terms of does the manager get sacked or not, I agree. That would be a Boehly Igbali decision. And also, like we literally learned by, I can't remember which source it was, that the decision to leave Aubameyang out of the Champions League squad wasn't a Potter decision alone, was a board decision. And by board, I don't think Boehly and Igbali personally. Pice, you can maybe disagree with that, but I think that was with Stanley, Vivell, those kind of people, including Potter decision. If we have time, we'll get to talking about them thinking Fofana is better in every important metric than Aubameyang, which I found very interesting. But you know what I mean? Like in terms of, I see the term yes man, sure, but when I think about what benefit, like what would a yes man in this scenario look like? Like, what do they think? That Boehly just picks whichever players he fancies, and then he just signs them, and basically is like Potter just has to agree to all the players. But then,
Yeah, I don't see Potter as the guy that says no to Boehly. I don't see it like that. That's why I think he's kind of a yes man. I do see it in a sense of like, it's good that he's not a yes man in a sense of like he works with Boehly like it's more just like I just don't feel like he's like the type of manager like, you know, like when Matt Law said it, he said in an article, he said Boehly was annoyed after Tuchel's complaints of the Arsenal pre-season game, and he said that you know, those with knowledge feel like you know, Potter fits his style more, and I just thought of that as like, what? So Boehly just doesn't want to be questioned by the manager then?
see,
Like,
I think no, but I think
that's
it's
just
it's being
to
publicly
me, it's a
I think it's
simple
being
case of-
publicly
Sorry, Charlie.
questioned though, isn't it? Sorry, mate.
I'll let you talk about it in a second. Because to me, it's like, to me, that says what Boehly doesn't like is a manager taking things public. To me, that doesn't scream Boehly doesn't accept when, you know, the manager doesn't like something. What to me, Boehly doesn't like is a manager taking
disagrees
things
with him,
public.
though?
Sorry?
Do you think like behind the scenes Potter like if Boehly came to him with an idea, do you think Potter says, "Oh no, I don't like that"?
Yeah.
Really, I don't. I just personally don't see him as that type of person, to be honest.
I think Potter is actually very much so with his ideas personally.
I don't know, man.
He's certainly not a particularly confrontational man, that's for sure. But I think the term yes man, either it's used in different ways, but to me, a yes man is someone that's not taking decisions himself, that is being presented with decisions, and if he doesn't like the decisions, not doing anything about it. If decisions are taken and you don't have a problem with them, what do you need to say about it? Do you know what I mean? Like, if you want to be super fickle about it, are we calling Tuchel a yes man because we signed players that are bad? Or what are we calling Tuchel bad for picking bad players? Like, you know, like where does the point come in where like what's a yes man and what isn't? Because is a yes man someone agreeing with someone? But what if you just have the same opinion and you're not allowed to agree? Like,
I think it's more of a pushover kind of thing as well. Like,
yeah, I
I
don't see him as like, I don't see Potter as like the authoritative figure, and I feel like Boehly and Igbali, they want to be those authoritative figures. Like, you see how much they're around Cobham. Like, you know, for example, Tuchel said he didn't want the owners around Cobham. I want to focus on coaching my team. Potter's kind of that guy who's just like, oh yeah, come along, like everything's I just don't like. I don't know. Maybe it's an image more than anything. I just don't think he's that like authoritative figure to tell Boehly no. He's happy to be here. Like, it's his biggest ever jobs, his biggest ever payday, his biggest ever, you know, like he's just. I don't know, man. It just doesn't sit right with me. Like. And that's why I feel like, again, like they're sticking with him through this bad run, because like I genuinely feel like if they employed like someone like, I mean, I don't know, you know, Enrique personally, but like if another manager would historically like not have a go at the owners, but like maybe question them a little bit, I just don't feel like, you know, that they'd be here anymore. I feel like Boehly wants someone in charge that doesn't not question them, but don't like push the, like, you know what I mean? He wants to keep everything under control, and I guess that's fine, but I think there's got to be a certain limit to it.
There's definitely a grey area
I
to it, man. For
see
sure.
where you're coming from. I would say he just wants someone that has somewhat aligned opinions for the future, rather than that it's okay, you need to agree with everything I have, with everything I say. I think it's a case of, well, if we're trying to take this club forward, the most beneficial way to do that is if the manager and the owner are on the same wavelength. So then the owner gets someone in charge of the team that is on the same wavelength, rather than someone that disagrees but then doesn't say anything about it. I think the point was that Tuchel and Boehly were not on the same wavelength in terms of how to take the club forward. I mean, we flagged in terms of Tuchel wasn't such a fan of buying a lot of young players, but wanted more like experienced, proven winners. But then he also told us we didn't need any midfielders. So, you know, funny that one. I think it's more that I think that they just wanted someone on their wavelength in terms of how to take a club forward. That's how I see it. I understand if people see it differently. I mean, before I let Dharmesh answer, let me just, where is it now? Jester's answer to his own statement or question was, the answer to my own statement is people call Potter a yes man because they don't like the owner, so it's a passive-aggressive way to blame them. I don't know about that one, bro, but I mean, for some people,
I do
maybe,
agree with that a little bit.
I really don't think Pice has a problem with the owner. So if Pice calls Potter a yes man, I don't think he has a problem with Boehly other than for not sacking Potter. So certainly, maybe it applies to some, but I think you can say it applies to. Go on, Charlie. Go on, sorry.
No, but I was going to say is that I think people, because Potter's not been sacked and they think he should, they're then thinking that, oh, Boehly doesn't want to sack him because he's a yes man. And that's where I think the whole yes man thing's coming from, is because they're not sacking him. Oh, they must not be sacking him because he's a yes man. They just want someone in place that's going to like be easy and not cause any problems. And to a degree, I get that. Like, you want someone that's not going to, we've seen it over the years, like we've seen managers at Chelsea criticize Roman. They're gone. They're like that. That's the beginning of the end. And I'm not saying that like,
that's a good point, by the way. Roman didn't like any managers disagreeing with him either.
He didn't like managers disagreeing with him. And if you disagreed with Roman, like everyone's going to, managers are going to have disagreements with the owners. That's cool.
What do you
that
think
happens.
Jose was sacked after that Rosenberg draw.
Yeah,
think about it.
Jose didn't want fucking Shevchenko. He didn't want him. He didn't want
Ballack.
Ballack.
The end that signing.
No, it was the beginning of the end. Yeah, but like what I'm saying is that like there's. Boehly doesn't want someone that's just going to say yes to everything he says, but what he wants is that someone that doesn't. This is just my opinion, but I think they want someone that's not going to publicly criticize them. They're like more than like, I think if Potter disagrees with something, like I don't know him personally, but I'd like to think that he's big enough to say that actually, you know what, I don't agree with that. I think we should.
We'll just say it nicely rather than shouting in your face.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. And I don't know, but I just think that's where the whole yes man thing is kind of coming from, like in terms of people like think like obviously Boehly didn't sack him. Oh, therefore he must be a yes man because he's not.
Otherwise, Boehly would have sacked him.
Otherwise, Boehly would have sacked him. Exactly. This is it. And like people act like they're at the fucking training ground and they know exactly what's going on. Like you've got no idea. It's like people think they're experts and they're there day in day out and they know what's going on and they know what Potter does. Like the amount of people's heads that Potter lives rent free in is embarrassing. it really is. Like it honestly is. Like I'm not like I don't blindly back Graham Potter, but I think he should be afforded a bit more time. Yes. Am I aware that results are absolutely unacceptable? Of course they are. Like no Chelsea fan thinks these results are good enough, but it's never as simple as just sack the manager, because I guarantee all those people that are saying sack the manager, someone else comes in. We don't win for 3 or 4 games. Oh, this manager's not good enough. We need someone else. And you just go round and round in circles.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. Like Potter is rent free in so many people's heads. The amount of space that Potter takes up in people, like in certain fans' heads, like is honestly, like just have a day off. But seriously, like,
yeah, it's true. It's true. I mean, Dharmesh, let me take it to you. What's your thoughts to the question, I guess, in the first place, and also in terms of how Pice were? Like, do you see where Pice is coming from in terms of what's making him kind of feel like Potter is a bit of a yes man?
Yeah, obviously I've just been listening to everything you guys have been saying, kind of like digesting in as well as the comments as well. But yeah, I think it was it just a super chat or one of his comments? I forgot which one it was. The one you put on screen just before that. It's a bit weird because I was thinking of sort of like the Jurgen Klopp sort of situation at Liverpool. Because would you sort of argue that he's a yes man as well, but he's not at the same time, which is a bit weird because it's obvious that he's not getting fully backed by FSG, but at the same time, he's big enough and as a manager to sort of have his own decisions on the players that he wants and he doesn't want. So that's this kind of like manager that I was thinking of in terms of like who's a perfect yes man, but not a yes man at the same time, where they're not going to sort of like have any disagreements but be respectful about it. And Jurgen Klopp's probably the most perfect like example that I can think of with regards to that. But with regards to sort of the original super chat or the question, whatever it was about Potter being a yes man, I could kind of see both arguments to it in terms of maybe the players that we signed in January. We obviously don't know if Graham Potter wanted all these players or not. We didn't know. So, and even with sort of the recruitment team that we obviously brought in the summer, like they might have obviously asked these people like, oh look, here's Mudryk, here's Madueke, should we sign them? And then Boehly's probably like, yeah, let's do it. Why not? And then Potter's probably like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll just roll with it, see what happens. He could be like that. Or at the same time, they probably went to Potter first and said, oh, okay, yeah, we got these players, but yes, obviously, like Charlie said, we don't know what's going on in the training ground, and we don't know like if Potter's a yes man or a no man. But yeah, I agree with Josh's comment as well.
We can't know for sure, I suppose, but my opinion is you don't make it to where Potter made it to even being considered by a club like Chelsea Football Club if you're a yes man. I don't think you even make it that far, personally. But maybe that's me being slightly naive. I quickly want to react to this message by Josh CFC. Klopp had the CV worthy of time, like giving time, blah, blah. I'm not even sure who was talking about that. But regardless of this whole had a CV, this, by the way, this is why we buy players for 120 million rather than getting talented young players. And that's why it pisses me the fuck off when players are like, oh, why do we need to sign players? Why can't we be like Leicester and find Kante and Mahrez in the middle of nowhere of France and then make them these great players? Because our fan base would never allow that to happen. That's why. Because then you would say, well, where's the CV? What's he done? You know, people were like, when Enzo cost a lot of money, well, what's he done? Well, why should he cost that money? And then when you sign a cheap player, you're like, why should he start? This is what doesn't get up in this fan base's brains. We're like, you can't have it both ways. You cannot. Unless what you really wanted is just to continue things the way they were under Roman Abramovich, sacking a manager every 18 months, only ever going for the very top managers, which, by the way, you run out of eventually if you sack them every 18 months. That's why we had one of them twice, you know, and then we ended up with our club legend as a manager because we quite literally had run out of other managers to a point. That's why Lampard ever became a manager, Chelsea manager, because we ran out of people to a point.
And the transfer ban as well.
That we want. Gone.
And the transfer ban as well. Lampard would never have been. Yeah, that was the only reason he got the job. He would never be a Chelsea manager if there was no transfer ban.
Exactly. But, and that is the next issue. People are under Roman, everything was so great. Remember the transfer ban? How did it happen? By doing everything right? Don't think so. Do you know what I mean? But I want to take it back to something we were talking about. I think it was Damesh that was talking about it, actually. And then I will get to the next super chat by Mr. CFC. We'll get to that later on. I want to talk about the whole style of play debate because I find it interesting. It's an interesting one because you say, under Ten Hag or even Sarri at Chelsea, you saw a style of play very quickly. And I'll start with you on this one, Charlie. What is your thoughts on this? Number one, do you see a style of play? And if not, what is your thoughts on that? Because I'm not really sure what I think of that. Because to me, there are certain things which we have done regularly ever since Graham Potter has been here, which I'm like, well, do you not define that as part of the style of play? But then there's other, because I feel like, do people just call it that because it doesn't work? Or do they say we don't have a style of play because we actually don't? What's your thoughts on that, Charlie?
I don't know. It's tricky because obviously you could quite easily say with the results, oh, there's no style of play. But at the same time, I think a few things get lost because we're doing so shit. Now, I think in aspects of the performances, aspects of when Potter's been here, I actually think defensively we've got back to where we were and maybe slightly improved. We're not letting the game. Losing any game is not acceptable at Chelsea, but we're losing games by one goal. Now, I'm not saying that's acceptable, but we're not conceding a lot of goals. So I look at that as
the second best defense in the league. Somehow.
This is what I mean. So defensively, we're pretty
not sure
good.
How that's possible, but
defensively we're good. And then in terms of a style of play, there's been moments in certain games where I've looked at it and thought, all right, that's kind of what he's looking to try and do. And it's not for long enough, and it needs to be for longer. It needs to be for whole matches. It needs to be for match after match. But I thought first 30 odd minutes against West Ham was fantastic football. And that's kind of maybe what we're looking to do there. I thought against Dortmund,
But is
we were
that what a
pretty good.
style of play means? Is a style of play only when it works? Because that's my question. Because I'll ask you, what's
Well,
the style
well-
of play Jose Mourinho plays? Are
Well,
people
this
just
is
going to say
what-
park the
well,
bus?
no,
Because
but he doesn't-
what
he
is a
doesn't make-
style of play as such? You know what I mean?
I guess a style of play is more of an identity. Like, what do you associate a certain manager's teams with? So, for example, you might go to Mourinho and you'd say, right, okay, the identity of a Mourinho team, hard to beat, and wins matches. And then, but this idea that Mourinho played defensive football is
But
actually
winning
nonsense.
matches is no identity. That's
No,
just...
but I think the identity was just under Jose was kind of like hard to beat. I guess you were. I don't know. Like an identity, I suppose, is like what do you think of when Chelsea play matches? Like what do the team do? Are they defensive? Are they counter attacking? Do they play free flowing football? I guess it's those sort of things. Or are you a team that sits deep? You know, I guess like Graham Potter's identity, like obviously hasn't found it at Chelsea yet, hasn't imprinted that on the team. But if you look at the Brighton team, you would say that Brighton side, was. It was a decent side.
I watched a video last night exactly on it popped up ironically. It was on Graham Potter's first game of the season when he beat Ten Hag at Old Trafford, the very first game. And what you saw there, he said in this performance you saw the identity of Graham Potter's team, and it was very, very high and aggressive pressing. It was lots of little triangles. Like he basically cut this like analysis up into clips, and my God, the Brighton players. It was literally, I think it was like Welbeck.
I think Solly March scored as well.
Solly March, but there was like three main
Trossard, I
players.
believe, as well.
The way they played out of Man United's counter press and everything was just absurd for the players. Like if you just look at like Welbeck, March, I think another one was like
Pascal Gross as well.
But
Yeah,
I think
scored
it
at
was
Old
something like
Trafford,
that. But I was watching the video and I was just like, holy shit! Like they really did really well. Like that was an unbelievable performance. Whereas, like against Southampton, bro, I've got to say, Charlie, I don't know.
I saw nothing. Saw nothing, mate.
No, not even just that. One specific thing. That is the worst pressing I've ever seen in my life, bro. Honestly, I was baffled.
It was lazy. It was just lazy
at all. And I just think like Graham Potter's sides at Brighton, they always relentlessly press. They had so much energy, so much legs. Like, where is that? I don't understand that because we've got players to do that.
Well, I understand where that question comes from. Don't you think that there needs to be a difference between how you play when you are Brighton going to Old Trafford compared to being Chelsea?
No, I think you set the tone up. You from the very first minute, especially when we're playing.
No. I'm not talking about general
like
press. I'm not talking about press as a whole. I'm talking about shouldn't there be a difference in style of play if you're in charge of Brighton, and especially if you're going to teams that are better than you, compared to if you are Chelsea and almost every team you play against is worse than you. You're gonna have to play differently. So to expect us to play like Brighton did, that would do us a disservice because then we wouldn't get the best out of ourselves, because you need to play with Brighton the way you play with Brighton because you don't have the best players. So you need to do other things. But when you have the better players, you need to have different ways to beat teams that don't have the better players because they will try to beat you as having the better players. Because the whole press thing, let me talk about that, because I saw a tactical analysis about how we press and why we press so oddly or kind of not at all under Graham Potter at the moment. And let's not use Southampton as the example because we all agree Southampton, especially the first half, was disgraceful in every way. But what we do is a mid-block press. I'm not sure if people are aware of what that is, but a mid-block press is basically when you don't press at an opponent's defense, but you basically press just basically around the halfway line, just before it, just after it. And what the idea behind that is that you let the opponent push into that area, then you crowd that area, win the ball there, and then go. While compared to if you press higher, what that leads to is the opponents will play more long balls because you try to press them, because you're not always going to win the ball off them. And then you either play against a team that somehow plays through you if your press doesn't work, or against most teams, they will end up hitting a long ball when you press them hard enough. But what will that lead to? The ball goes over the midfield and ends up with your midfielders. So if you have a mid-block of a press instead, that invites the opponents into passing it into midfield because you have all that space with the defenders, then you pass it into there. And then as the ball comes in, you try to win the ball off them. Now,
Well, that's clearly not working, so he needs to change that.
But that is a whole different conversation. I mean, Tuchel tried to press and it didn't always work. You know, Man City tried to press. Look at when they lost against Spurs. You were like, what is City's tactic? You're like, what are you even doing? Do you know what I mean? That doesn't mean they don't have a tactic, just because that just means it doesn't work. I think there's a big difference between not having a style of play and a style of play not working. I think that's a big difference. But let me ask you, what is a style of play to you? Because I would say our style of play, in like a general style of play, hasn't changed too dramatically from what it was under Thomas Tuchel, in terms of we want a certain amount of defensive solidity. We want to control the ball. We want to build up fairly slowly and then shift the ball left and right around the box until space is created and we go through. On occasion, we try to attack a little bit quicker, but what we mainly do is still have possession. Again, we still have the third highest amount of possession in the Premier League. So, like, how you can say we don't, like, again, you might not like how it doesn't work, but I don't understand, like, what do you mean we don't have a style of play? It might not have changed much from what we had before, and I think that's why people think we don't have a style of play, just because we do things similarly to before. But I think this, because what would you have described our style of play as under Thomas Tuchel? Possession heavy, slow in build up, using the wide areas to attack, to create chances. Like, that hasn't really changed.
Use
so
the wing
much. That doesn't
backs as
mean
well,
it isn't there,
forwards.
Right? Sorry.
Yeah, I would say under Tuchel, I mean, we all know how big the wing backs were for us, and I think, you know, when we didn't have those wing backs, it was, you know, pretty dreadful at times. And I think the difference between Potter and Tuchel is Potter wants more players. Or actually, like, yeah, I don't know about wants, because I just feel like Tuchel was obviously, okay, I'm not going to go down that road. I was going to say, just go down like the stubborn road and it would start a different conversation. But like, Potter for me is more attacking in terms of like what he's trying to do with Chelsea. I'm not saying Tuchel's not an attacking manager, but clearly he looked at our squad back then and thought this was the best sort of thing. But I think Potter wants more players in and around the box, and Tuchel did want that at times, but Tuchel didn't really do anything to change that. Whereas I feel like,
is that all what you call a style of play, though? Because that to me is just what we do in the attacking third.
I think it's more of like what you guys said. It's more of like an identity. It's more of like, okay, like when I think of, like when I think of like Arsenal, what do I think? What's their style of play? What's their identity? You know, and then you give an answer from there. I don't necessarily.
What do you think of when you ask that question to yourself about Arsenal as an example?
Arsenal, very, very, very aggressive. In terms of their pressing, I think they're very reliant on Partey and Xhaka in the build-up, because I've seen them without them too. And I mean, now they've got Jorginho. I mean, that kind of suits my point as well, because why do you think they got Jorginho? Like, you know, they were very. I'm not saying it's similar to Sarri, but they do like a lot go through, you know, Xhaka and Partey. But every time I watch Arsenal, like, I don't know whether again it's just because they're doing so well, but even when they were like, you know, even when they were behind Man City, like, my God, like they start games so fast. Like the pressing is just, I don't know how they keep doing it. Like they just
overload the midfield as well.
Can I follow that question? And I'm not expecting you to have an answer to that, because you're obviously not an Arsenal fan. But if you now go back 3 years and it was the first 3 months of Mikel Arteta, do you think you would have seen the same style of play? Because I don't.
But I mean,
and that's what I'm trying to say. Again, I'm not trying to say what's happening now is acceptable, but that I just think certain parts of criticism that Potter gets just make no sense to me. I'm like, that doesn't mean you can't criticize him, but certain bits of criticism, I'm like, well, yeah, we're losing pretty much every game. Of course, you're not going to see a style of play. Once we win, you will. That doesn't mean it's not there, though.
But what I would also say to that is, like, how can you expect a style of play when you're playing 4 or 5 new players in the team like every fucking match? How can you expect any style of play to form when the team's changing every week? A load of new players have arrived. You're not just going to suddenly find a style of play in the first couple of games. Yeah, you'd expect some basics, but to actually develop a proper identity, and people don't want to hear this, and they'll probably want to disagree with me, but it's absolute facts that you cannot expect to have a style of play and an identity when you've signed so many new players in such a short space of time. The whole point is that in the pre-season, you work on your style of play, you work on your identity. That's where you have the most time with the players, generally speaking. You know, we had a summer window in January. Like in mid-season, to expect to sign 6 or 7 first-team players and then instantly expect a style of play is just utter nonsense, because that just doesn't happen. And
Charlie, this was not the normal January window, though. We signed world-class players, Charlie.
No, I know we signed world-class players, but the point is, though, like that doesn't mean that it's instantly going to work. And not every single one of those players is world-class. You probably say that. I mean, it's irrelevant.
2 are currently world-class.
2. I mean, I would say that Enzo Fernandez is very good. I'd say he's got the potential to be one of the best midfielders in the world. And
I would have even included him. So I would have said Enzo and Joao.
Okay, maybe not world class, but they're very, very good. And I just don't.
They are, of course.
What keeps coming back to this whole like, oh, you know, but look at the context. Like, we've got so many new arrivals. Are they young? Yeah, but they're also like the best young players in the world. Like amongst them, it's not like. I just that is something that annoys me.
But a young player,
but it's still going to take time.
But I'd still like to know. Like, we talk about our identity in that, but what was our identity in the Tuchel? Because you can't say we were always pressing super high. You can't say we were always defensive. You can't say we were, because that's what I'm trying to get at. Some managers don't do the same thing every time, and I see so many fans always say we need to be more adaptable. So, but. Unless being adaptable is the identity, then doesn't being adaptable mean you don't have an identity? Because otherwise, how can it be adaptable, right? Because like you can say under Tuchel we were like at least aggressive and you know like I don't know, always believed in ourselves, whatever identity you wanna describe it as. But that clearly didn't happen all the time, because otherwise we wouldn't have talked about lackluster performances, which did happen at times. So again, I'm not even disagreeing that we don't have a style of play or identity. We don't right now. I don't see it. But what I don't know is what exactly that entails, and what was it before, for example. Like, you know, that's why I'm like, why criticize about Potter when I don't even know what it was under Tuchel. You know,
well,
I mean, what was an identity under Tuchel?
Well, I think on the Tuchel, we obviously on the ball, we wanted to have a lot of possession. We wanted to use Jorginho as the main build-up guy and maybe suck the opponents in, and then use the wing-backs to use our, you know, that was our main port of attack was the width. Combinations out wide, overloads. That was what I would say we mainly did on Tuchel. It wasn't so much what we did. It was more like what the opponents did. And Tuchel was like very clever at like adapting to the opponents. It wasn't so much on us, I feel like. Whereas now under Potter, I feel like it's more on us. It's more, you know, I want to play like he's kept like 4-2-3-1 for like 10 games now. He obviously likes it. You know, he wants to play that. He wants to play possession. He again, I can't say too much right now, but it's clear he wants to play attacking football. All he ever talks about is attacking football, how to improve the combinations in the final third. Like, he clearly wants to do stuff, but the longer it doesn't happen, the more frustrated the fans are going to get. And I feel like why the fans are so frustrated is because we've got these brilliant players in, like Mudryk, like Felix, like Enzo, like, you know, other players, and they're not like, we're not really like seeing that. And I feel like, I said it earlier, I would be way less harsh on Graham Potter if he didn't have that window. But now he's had that window. I expect
but don't
results.
You think it's too soon to make that window the final judgment? In terms of Mudryk isn't fully fit, Joao Felix and Enzo, yes, are, but half the other players can't even play in Europe. But like, Badiashile is superb anyway. So like,
how has he
Badiashile literally helped us fix our defense,
Laurenz?
really.
Laurenz,
and then,
how has he made the defense so good, but the attack so shit? I don't understand.
But the attack's always been so shit.
You start with the defense. You start by solidifying the defense, and then you work your way forward. Tuchel did the same thing. First game, he was like, "Okay, don't care about not scoring a goal." We literally basically had no chances to score in that first game against Wolves.
0-0, wasn't it? Yeah.
But played a back five and just made sure we fixed defensively, because on Lampard it was dreadful, right? That's what he did. And then slowly but surely, as the months went on, we got better going forward. Now, absolutely, I agree. It clearly happened quicker. But I think it happened quicker because we played a more simple, pragmatic style of play. Because playing defensive is easier than playing offensive. But we're clearly not executing it right. So, like, I'm not trying to even defend what Potter is doing. I'm asking the question, what you are expecting to see, because that's like, who said it there? Basically, someone said, I'm talking as if I never heard the word style of play until 3 weeks ago, which I get what you're trying to get at. But my question of that is, does everyone have a style of play? Because I mean, yeah, Sarri had a style of play. When we had Sarri, everyone was constantly talking about our style of play. What was our style of play on the Lampard? Everyone was like cross and vibes, that's not style
Man,
of play.
it was basketball on the Lampard, wasn't it?
Conceding like 3 or 4.
Maybe Lampard is a bad example because we all weren't particularly happy with it. But let's not forget there was also times we were top of the league, mind you. But still, I couldn't have told you what necessarily the style of play was. Because like what you just explained, Pies, in terms of, yeah, sure, it's not us wing backs anymore. But in terms of, one midfielder, dictating everything, that's basically what Enzo did since he's turned up. He's basically just did what Jorginho does, really.
Yeah, but he's nowhere near as good at doing that, though, so...
Which is half the problem and why you and me, Pies, agree that it was the most stupid thing to sell Jorginho. But, that is its whole different discussion. Let's get to this super chat before I bring up some tweets and we talk about some things that have happened. Mr. CFC says, reason don't want Potter sacked is that manager market is dead. Short-term ones, Enrique, Messi, Suarez, Neymar tax, bad pre-Barca, underwhelming with Spain at World Cup. Zidane carried by elite players at Real Madrid, Flick, term too short. I don't fully disagree. Now, obviously, Pice has made a fair point. I'm not sure if publicly on his Twitter or just to us, but they said, Enrique was mainly bad at Roma, but that is 2011. That's 12 years ago. We shouldn't maybe focus on that too much, which is
but he was shit at Spain as well. Let's be real.
Absolutely. And mind you, Hansi Flick was shit at Spain. Because so if we're saying Potter is
Hansi Flick was shit at Germany as well.
Germany. If we're now saying Potter is shit because he's been shit at Chelsea, he was not shit at Brighton. So by that logic, Flick was great at Bayern, shit at Germany. So should we then not sign him? Because I mean his last thing was real bad is bad. Like that is half of my problem. I think I lost faith that Potter is good enough. But I don't know there's no obvious replacement in my mind, especially right now. If we get the replacement for the summer,
I think any of those managers makes our players better.
Go on.
I disagree. I just think like what we're basically saying here is that a large percentage of people would be happy to throw away kind of the long-term plan for a little kind of feel-good run of say 3 to 5 games to feel better, and then the reality sets back in again. That's essentially what happens here. Like you get a bit of a new manager bounce, we feel a bit better about ourselves with 3 or 4 games, then we forget everything, all the problems as if they're gone away. And then we suddenly realize, none of those problems have been resolved at all. And we have the same conversations that we're having now, with just a different person in the dugout.
Who is a better managers, though?
Yeah, but that doesn't. Yeah, but what I'm saying is, like, sure, people like, mate, do you think like if we sacked Potter, right, and one of these guys come in, it's instantly better?
I don't think we lose at home to Southampton. That's for sure.
No, maybe not. But the point is, though, do you think it's instantly better? Do you think we come in and we suddenly win like 5 or 6 on the spin?
But isn't that a really bad example, Pice? Surely we lost Jose Mourinho's home record at home against Sunderland. No matter who the manager is, again in terms of the form as a whole, it's a fair point. If you only pick out Southampton, I think it's an awful example because anyone can have a freak awful result. So, I don't think you could just say, we wouldn't have... we lost to Southampton under Tuchel at home.
We lost 5-2 to West Brom as well, didn't we?
You can't just say, that wouldn't happen.
I think you bring any one of those 3 managers in, they demand respect from the players. I think the players respect him more. I think they listen to their ideas more, and I think we're just a better team.
They're new, then?
No, because they're experienced managers, and they don't come from fucking Brighton. That's why.
Sorry?
I said they're figures. They're figures like Zidane, Enrique, Flick. They're figures of football. They don't come from Brighton.
Because let's not forget when Flick got the Bayern job, he was never anything other than an assistant.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is,
how did he make it work at Bayern then?
If he
was never anything other than an assistant, so how did he demand respect? How did anyone respect him?
Then again, it is the Bundesliga. Let's be real. Bayern the Bundesliga.
But that's besides the point.
Those players knew him previously, because he was working with them.
What did Brighton win? Well, it's Brighton. What did Klopp win at Mainz? What did Tuchel win at Mainz? That's what you have to compare these two.
But so should Potter be in charge then if he hasn't won anything? That's the question. Like that's
But
what
But
I-
everyone starts somewhere. Like imagine
question
like
was asked in September. Now that
Chelsea
question's
is the
not
wrong
on.
place to start, bro. You don't
but
start at Chelsea.
Pep at
with your big
Barcelona,
career.
right? I know he'd been a player there. He managed the fucking whatever it was, the academy or the reserves or whatever, and went straight into the top job. Imagine if someone had managed the academy or the reserves at Chelsea and they went into the top job. There'd be utter outrage. I know it's slightly different with Pep because of what he did with it as a player and stuff. I get that. But this idea that, people shouldn't have jobs, they've not won anything. Success is not black and white. You're not like winning
Imagine
is not.
if Jody Morris became from youth team manager, first team manager. We would have lost our shit.
Yeah, well, this is what I mean. Like, success is not just trophies or no trophies. Yeah, trophies is one barometer of success, but success is also different for whatever club you're at. Success at Brighton is not winning trophies. Success at Brighton is sustaining yourself as a Premier League side and trying to build yourself into a top half team and stay in the Premier League each year and try and push for the European places on a good year. That's success.
The only reason I wanted Potter at Chelsea is because I was excited about the football he played at Brighton and his principles. And none of those have come over to Chelsea. So
Yeah,
And they haven't yet. No,
That's
They
fair.
haven't.
now-
And
so
that-
now
and
I'm
that-
concerned.
Who knows if it's going to come over? Like we
But
don't know. If it's
and
gonna...
that's perfectly valid, and that's perfectly fair. This Matty guy is just he's chatting out his arse in the chat. Honestly,
Also,
I
just
mean-
add to Charlie's point as well about sort of like the standards of sort of like those kind of clubs, like Brighton, for example. Like look at say Fulham this year as well. Like everyone tipped them to go down, and it's sort of their expectation to sort of avoid relegation, but then again fight for sort of European places. And the fact that they made, I think, was it a Europa League final, I believe, 1 year as well. Like to them, that's success. But at the same time, with us, like, yeah, it's just mad.
But,
Like,
let's be serious as well. I think my whole thing is I don't think managers like Graham Potter are. I mean, I just don't think they'll be successful at Chelsea. I don't think he is. I just don't think he's Chelsea. Like Sarri as well. Let's be serious. If Sarri didn't have Hazard, he contributed over 50% of our fucking goals for fuck's sake. If Sarri didn't have Hazard, mate,
Did Sarri
God
have
knows
Hazard
where
at
we'd
Napoli?
finish.
Didn't know that.
what's that?
Didn't know Sarri had Hazard at Napoli.
No, that's what I'm saying though. Like,
Juve. Better
At
than
other
Pirlo, better than Allegri. They have more
at other clubs, I think Sarri, Graham Potter, lesser clubs. I think they can do well there. I don't see them as Chelsea managers. Like,
Can I ask you a question, Pies? Why?
there's a
I mean, I
certain
know you see
identity
managers
there.
a little bit differently, but why is it okay for us to sign players that aren't ready and still need a bit of time? Because you could argue Mudryk needed a step between Shakhtar and us to be ready. Like Potter needed a step between Brighton and us. Why is it different? Why is it okay for players that they need to learn a little bit here, but not okay for managers? Again, like it's okay if you don't. That's fine. And because that's, I think, part of the problem.
Well, it's
Potter
really not though,
didn't-
is it? Because
Potter
everyone's
isn't
already
like
saying
Klopp.
Mudryk out.
Potter isn't ready-made. Potter isn't like Klopp or Pep, ready-made to be perfect, to be a great winning, like title-winning manager. But what I think but we knew that though. Like that's why I'm so confused. Like if you were constantly from day one of his appointment, if everyone from day one of the appointment had those questions, had those criticisms, that's fair enough. But what I find weird is that people turn up with that 3 months, 4 months later. And I'm like, we knew that though.
Laurenz,
Well,
no one was
basically what
expecting
doing-
us to be
Signing
10th.
Potter is like
Laurenz.
signing Mudryk, essentially.
No
you sign
one
a
was
player
expecting us to be 10th.
Like a
bro.
manager who has potential there, and then you see whether he's able to, well, what's the right word? Not exploit, but make use of that potential with us. Is it not like, I know Potter looks old as shit because, doesn't help that he's English, but isn't it like signing a young player? Like, it's no different, is it?
Well, no, it is different because if you have Mudryk, like you can just play Pulisic another week. Like you can't do anything
Yeah.
else with the manager. Like the manager is there. Like you can't as well. It's so much easier to get rid of a manager than it is a player. Like you can't just with Mudryk, we have to give him time because he's here for ages. Like the quickest you can sell him is like 2 years. We don't have to give Graham Potter time. They're choosing to give Graham Potter time. Like it's very, very difficult. And by the way, I don't think that point runs very well because I think as well, I've already seen people say like, fuck Mudryk, he's shit, he's another Werner.
But that's because our fan
toxic
base
as
is
hell.
toxic, not because it's a valid point.
He hasn't played football for ages as well. We have to remember the stuff with the war and stuff. Like they cancelled obviously their league because of that as well. So he's obviously not going to be match fit as well. And Graham Potter sort of managed his minutes as well. I don't think he's played 90 minutes for us yet. Mudryk, has he? I don't think he's played like a full 90 yet for us. I think he's.
But I understand where you're coming from, Pice. Yeah, I understand it, and that maybe the manager shouldn't be, in terms of learning on the job, shouldn't be less experienced, because you need the manager to at least be seasoned, so you can have the young players to, be the non-seasoned ones, the inexperienced ones. I understand where you're coming from with that. But if you look at how Boehly did things at the Dodgers, did the same thing. So might not be fun, absolutely, and I agree. But just because it isn't working, and because by that logic, Dortmund should have never appointed Klopp. Now, Dortmund aren't like us, I understand. But still, if they're like, we can't get a manager who's only done well at some lesser club, and yes, he got them promoted, but not Potter's fault that Brighton were already not promoted. He got Östersund from the 5th division in Sweden to the 1st division and won the Swedish Cup and played Europa League. So, you can't say that, again, it's Östersund. It's a very different scenario, but you can't say he's never done anything. It's just not done anything to your level of expectations, because to a lot of people here, nothing outside of the top 5 leagues counts. But then when it's an opposition manager, we call them all farmers leagues anyway. So, it's one...
For me, this season,
I would prefer for our manager not to be a young manager that needs to learn on the job as well. But now that it is, I think we need to at least be aware of that, and not we need to understand that that's what he is, and not expect him to be something he's not. We can't expect Potter to be a ready-made trophy winner, because he isn't. You can want him to be, but just look at him. And look at what he's done before, and that he's not that. And I think when we criticize him, we can criticize what's not good enough on the pitch, but we need to criticize him with that in mind, though.
You can't.
Doesn't a guy need to be given the chance to learn? No. But
no.
That's not his fault. It's Boehly's fault for picking him. If you didn't want a manager that needs to learn on a job, that's fine. But the fact that Potter would need to learn on the job, you should have known from day one. If you didn't know that, that's your own fault, Pice.
Should it learn on the job, bro? He's experienced manager.
Mudryk will need to learn at Chelsea.
He's an experienced manager.
Pep needed to learn at Barcelona. Klopp needed to learn at Mainz and at Dortmund. Same as Tuchel. A manager needs to learn. You don't just spawn from your mother's vagina as a perfect manager. Don't happen like that. Do you know what I mean? I'm sorry, but if you weren't aware that Potter isn't gonna be ready to win the Champions League, just walking in from Brighton. Well, I'm sorry, but that's kind of your own ignorance.
I don't expect him to win the Champions League. I expected, at very worst, not qualifying for the Champions League by 5 or 6 points. I didn't expect 10th, having no idea what to do.
Absolutely. I'm just saying, and that is fair to criticize. I'm just saying, I feel like we criticize him as if he had won 3 Champions Leagues and 3 Premier Leagues, and we're like, but why are you so shit now? That's I don't know if it makes total sense. Let me get to the next super chat by Mr. CFC. We haven't even gotten to any of the news. We're just waffling, but we're having a good time. On the we shouldn't target mid-table players front, Gary Cahill went from relegation fodder in Bolton to balling in the Champions League final. Also Van Dijk, Southampton, Mane, Southampton, Robertson, Hull City, Alphonso Davies were from, what was it, Vancouver Whitecaps?
What is this comparison? All of these brothers made instant impacts. Van Dijk was amazing from the start off. Mane was amazing. Robertson was amazing. Davies was amazing.
No, Robertson wasn't amazing. Robertson didn't even play for the first half season, though.
I think it's great at Hull. You see, and he came into Liverpool and he was brilliant.
At Hull he was great, but he didn't play from the get go.
No, but I think it's just more. I think the point more is that is the signing of the players and the clubs that where they're from. Imagine if Chelsea had signed someone from Hull. People would be like, well, what the fuck are the club doing? It's like people want us to find players before they become really expensive. But then when we do try and do that, they're like, well, why are we signing these players from these places? Why aren't we going for the ready-made ones?
I think players is a bit different because, I agree with you. I think I find it hilarious how literally, by the way, people, and I'm not even shitting you, when we signed Badiashile, people looked him up, right? None of these guys knew anything about him. I saw people on my timeline posting a picture of him and thought, oh, he can't be good. People genuinely were judging him on his looks. It was absolutely outrageous. And
that's what people do with our current assistant.
And now he's good. Right, now he's good. Now he's good. People are posting Badiashile fan cams. It's just like players, I think, is I do agree. Players is ridiculous. I agree. Some of them are just like Chelsea. I do. You can't find that balance for me. Like whoever, you can't please the fans in terms of players, because if you buy someone expensive, players people say it's too much rip off, and then if we buy someone like Badiashile, who's like £30 million, oh he's shit. He's not Gvardiol. Like players. I agree is stupid.
It's 1 in a million that happens where you like sort of find these sort of gems of players. It's like what you mentioned about Badiashile.
People had an agenda. Literally. People had an agenda against Badiashile before he even played because it wasn't Gvardiol. Like it's ridiculous. That's so dumb.
I mean, yeah. No, I know, Charlie. I know. I mean, yeah, I get what Pice is saying. Like players and managers aren't the same. At the same time, like, again, if you go through a manager every 18 months and you're like, so say we ignore the fact that we could have kept Tuchel. After Tuchel's gone, mind you, at the time, it was 3 months before the World Cup. So you weren't going to get Enrique, you weren't going to get Flick. So let's just say, okay, he absolutely had to. Tuchel was just gone. Who'd you replace him with? Like, you're not going to get Klopp, like the ready-made ones, Klopp, Pep, Ancelotti. They all had a job now. Nagelsmann even. So what do? Then you need to get someone where you see some potential, like with a player. When you can't sign Messi because he's too expensive, then you need to sign someone who you hope can be as good as Messi. Now, obviously, none of them are, but that's still what you have to do. No, like then that's part of the problem. If you get if you get Mourinho and you keep him for 20 years, well, then you're sorted, aren't you? But if you then sack him and then you're like, oh, shit, no other good managers around. What do we do now? But I do obviously, like I say, I'm also of the opinion that what Potter did so far isn't good enough. And I'm not sure anymore if it will be ever, if I'm being perfectly honest. I mean, let me just bring finally something up on screen if I can find the right thing. Not that one. Where is it? Might be that one. No, it's not that one either. We're going to take a minute, but I'm going to get there eventually. Is it that one? No. Well, let me just bring up this one. Apparently, we want to buy Strasbourg. So, Pice, so something slightly more positive. Oh, got rid of the flipping same thing again. Slightly more positive. Multi-club model is on the move. Good thing, bad thing? What do you think? Should we send Potter on loan to Strasbourg? Can you hear me?
Sorry, I was laughing and my thing was off.
Okay.
Yeah, no. Send him on loan to Strasbourg. He might do well. It's a lesser club than Chelsea. He might be able to deal with the expectations there, but no, we shouldn't do that. What, buy Strasbourg or loan him to Strasbourg? Oh, loan him to Strasbourg. No, I'd feel sorry for him if he went there. I mean, they're like 15th in League One, so. Although he was at Swansea, he was like, I'm pretty sure they was quite low at one time, but I don't really know much about this club, to be fair. Not. I mean, they have a fun badge. That's why they wear blue as well.
I'll just look at some of the players that they brought through, like Morgan Sanson. I think he plays for Villa, I believe.
Oh yeah,
he came from that. Yeah. He came from that club. I think Kevin Gamera. That's a blast from the past as well. I don't know if he still plays or not.
Didn't Klaus play for Strasbourg until he now went to Marseille?
I believe so. Yeah.
No. It was someone else.
Are you sure?
Someone else.
I think this guy called Suzuki as well.
Klaus was like the yellow kit team. Was it?
Lons. He was Lons.
Lons, yeah.
Well, all I know about Strasbourg is they wear Chelsea blue. Because if you look at my tweet, their kit is like ours.
Oh, is it? But their badge is more like City blue.
Yeah. But their kit is Chelsea blue.
But there you go. Klaus plays for Marseille now, but it's true, it was a load before. But Charlie, just as the last thing, you see this, Graham Potter is safe at Chelsea as the owners are looking at long-term, according to David Ornstein. And that's the next question I would like to talk about. Is there a point where you think the ownership, Boehly, will lose patience and will, that last little line will be ripped and you're like, okay, no, that's it? Like, do you see losing to Spurs as that? Do you see as getting knocked out by Dortmund as that? Or do you genuinely think almost no matter what happens for the rest of the season, he's gonna make it to the summer?
I think they want him to make it to the summer, but at the same time, results speak for themselves. And if we were to lose to Tottenham, I don't think he'd be sacked after Tottenham. But if we were to go out to Dortmund as well, say we were to lose one of the next 2 league games, Spurs or Leeds, and go out to Dortmund, as much as you want to back someone, from an ownership perspective, there almost becomes a point where that idea that this guy's the right, like we want him here for the long term, kind of gets overridden by what's being presented on the pitch.
Yeah.
You can't just be like, oh, we want this guy for the long term, so whatever happens for the rest of the season doesn't matter. Because, all right, we're not really playing for anything other than the Champions League. But at the same time, you can't just lose every week and be like, oh, it's fine because, we're going to keep him for the long term. We've got to build towards something. We've got to look at, using this rest of the season almost like a bit of a mini preseason and whatnot. So, yeah, I don't know. What's this?
I hope he's just joking. If not, you need to take a course in sarcasm, mate. But
yeah, but I think obviously that's the plan. But results dictate that, and any more poor results is going to make it really difficult, particularly if we were to lose to Tottenham on Sunday, a game that we always win. And at the same time, like if we were to go out of the Champions League as well, it makes that position very hard to hold on. And I think you'd find very few people that could continue to back him if we were to go out of the Champions League, lose to Tottenham. It makes it impossible to back. It's very difficult at the moment right now with the results. So like any more poor results, and that long-term thinking can quite easily change. But at the same time, maybe he's a man of his word and he will stick with Potter. But I imagine there has to be a point where there has to be a kind of a cutoff at where like this is not acceptable. We've got to change something, because otherwise you might as well just come out and say it doesn't matter what we do for the rest of the season. Potter's our guy. They might as well just come out and say that. If that's the thinking, and if these games don't matter.
The fans
I
will
agree.
decide.
I agree. I will post a question to the other boys in a second. Charlie, thank you for coming on.
No problem.
I appreciate it very much. Everybody subscribe to Charlie's channel, the Blues Brothers, link down the description. Just hit the ad down the description and it takes you straight to his channel. And subscribe. Charlie, appreciate you. And we'll see you soon.
No, thanks, guys. Take care. See you later.
Pice, I'll ask you a question. Do you see a line that if crossed, they will pull the trigger? Because, I mean, I feel like 3 games ago, we were saying, if we don't do well in the next 3 games, he will be gone. Well, it's 3 games later. We certainly didn't do well. So do you see it like somewhere like, the next 3 games are important? The thing is, the next 3 games are kind of important in terms of it's Tottenham, it's Leeds, and then most importantly, arguably, not in terms of the fans with Spurs, but in terms of the ownership, Dortmund. Do you think if those 3 go badly, it could be the end? Or are you at this point resigned to the fact that he's going to get to the end of the season almost no matter what happens?
Honestly, wish I could answer this question, but I don't know if I can. For me, I thought Southampton was it. I just generally thought it would be. I mean, I just don't know how you can survive that, especially with the fans at the end and how fan-centric these guys are supposedly are.
But then again, you also know fans. If we beat Spurs, we're gonna, they're gonna be all. It's gonna flip the complete other direction.
Yeah, no, I agree. But it's difficult because I think it depends who you believe and who you read as well. I think, for example, Matt Law said that Boehly was in quotations hoping that he could, that results could turn things around, almost as saying like, right, well, if we can't get the fans on board, then what the fuck's the point? Like having this guy because the fans don't like him, type of thing. But like how many, like what's the end period on that? Is it like the next 5 games? If if there's another like huge toxicity moment within the fan base, like is that it? Is it do you go past another 2 or like where I don't know. Unless you speak to them, I really don't know how you could possibly know. I mean, you'd think losing to Spurs, beating Leeds and getting knocked out by Dortmund, that would be it. I mean, how could you? I just don't like. It would be ridiculous. Like the fans, I don't know what the hell it'd be like that. It would be crazy. But I mean, as Potter said there today, like he knows results have to now because he's saying this as well because like he saw the reaction against Southampton. Like he can't say anything anymore because he knows the fans have lost their shit. So what's the point? Like just win games. That's all we want him to do. Win games. Like, but at the same time, I feel like it's got to such a point that you beat Spurs, you beat Leeds, lose against Dortmund. I think it could be incredibly toxic again because Champions League's the only thing we got left to play for. So
yeah.
But then again, like you lose to Dortmund, is there much point of really sacking him because you're out of that competition now? That's why I thought losing to Dortmund and losing to Southampton, you'd have this whole week to prepare for Spurs with the new manager, and then you'd also have a new manager bounce going into that Champions League second leg. But now he hasn't done that. I'm thinking, well, I don't think he's going to sack him because, but then again, I didn't think they'd sack Tuchel 6 games into the season. I thought they'd sack him after. I thought they'd sack him after what he said against Arsenal, and they didn't. So I mean, who knows, man? These guys.
After the Leeds game.
Like these guys are just unpredictable as fuck. So I don't know.
Like genuinely, if we get knocked out by Dortmund, and fingers crossed we don't, I still believe that we find a way through. Hopefully, ever too optimist, aren't I? But if we get knocked out by Dortmund and we don't sack Potter, I'll be number 1 surprised, number 2 shocked, and number 3 confused. Really. So
I'm sitting here with all I'm saying bad about Potter, and however Potter out I might be, I still think we're going to beat Dortmund. So I don't.
What, just win the Champions League, bro? Joao Felix is right on it.
Mate, if Potter won the Champions League after all this, fucking hell, I don't know.
It would be the biggest underdog story,
man.
literally.
Potter
himself would rival the Leicester story. If he wins
bro,
the Champions
I would
League.
never speak ever again on any manager in my life.
Bro. And in a way, I'm sure you hope that it does happen like that because that would mean winning the Champions League. So.
Bro, Champions League was the best night of my life. It was insane.
Exactly.
I'd do anything for that to happen. Like fucking hell.
Exactly. Exactly. I would just feel bad for poor Badiashile with how good he is, and now he wouldn't even be in the squad, man. Dharmesh, I know you need to go in a second as well. I will kind of multiple questions at once, really. In terms of, do you think that there is a limit that can happen? And in terms of going to earlier in the week when things like this have come out, senior sources insist there have been a number of instances of Potter becoming upset, having tough conversations with players in the dressing room and during meetings. Potter is described as being intense at Cobham. There is no fears over his mentality. Because the mentality is a thing that a lot of people have criticized and have questioned. And is because obviously from our perspective as fans, I find that understandable because the way he speaks, whether it's post-match interviews, most press conference, shall I say, and he looks on the touchline, it doesn't feel like that. But do you see this kind of comment as PR, simply to like somehow make the fans believe in it a little bit more? Or do you see it as, well, maybe this is true, and then if this is true, that maybe explains a little bit more why they are not as, worried about the mentality when they do see it at the training ground being normal? Because maybe I'm just being naive, but I can't see Potter. I think Potter is very much so a person, very English, English in the sense of, old school, a little bit posh English with like manners. You don't get too loud. You don't, rustle some feathers. You behave, you act properly, you act how you're supposed to. And then when the camera is not on you, when the world cannot see you, then you can let out some anger. Then you can let out whatever. Do you believe that? Or do you think he's always like what we see?
It's a tough one because at the end of the day, none of us will truly know unless we're there. But I think it's a bit of both. I think it's a bit of both a PR, but at the same time, I think it's a bit of sort of Boehly understanding the situation, sort of what Potter's in terms of not having managed a top club before, having the amount of players he has right now, which is about 33, 34. So in that sense, that's probably why he's reassured him that his job is safe. But at the same time, stuff about maybe becoming upset and having tough conversations, I can believe, like especially with after performances we've been putting in. I hope he's having tough conversations with the players and stuff. But becoming upset, I don't know.
To me, this becoming upset seems like a journalist's way of saying angry.
Yeah, I think, yeah, Jenny, I think you spot on there, mate, in terms of Matt Law probably spinning it a
Hey,
little
maybe
bit just to try
maybe
and
this is. I mean, I don't know why, but maybe this is. If this is true, maybe this is why some of the players are sort of, being a bit of, disinterested, a bit of, like maybe they don't like him because he's had a go at them. I don't know. Like
maybe
that
yeah.
could be it
None
as
of
But
well.
at the
then
end of the day, none of
we
us are
all
gonna know.
ask, like, not we all, well, a lot of us, most of us ask for Potter to have a go at them more, especially during games. So surely then we can't criticize it if he does it then, no?
Well,
Yeah, no idea, bro. Honestly, none of us are gonna know. Like, I think the only thing that we as fans care about at the end of the day is whether Chelsea are winning or losing. That's it, and whether there's sort of trophies coming into our club or not. That's the only thing that us as fans care about at the end of the day. Like this kind of stuff, like I'm not too bothered about it in a sense because, like I keep saying, we're never going to truly know unless we literally go there every day and work there. But I think the bit where obviously Pies tweeted about Potter described as being as intense. Like we don't know that as well. Like he might be tough on a few players. Like he might have his like say 15 players from his squad that he really likes, but then there's another 15 that he just doesn't fancy at all. So he because we're picking like match day squads and stuff. Like it's probably I think it's probably done about 2 or 3 days before the actual match day in terms of prepping for the game, prepping for sort of like tactics as well. So yes, it's all a bit crazy. Like it's just like so like convenient how it's all sort of coming out now in terms of like stuff going on when we're doing bad. It's just like typical sort of like PR stunts, to be honest.
It is absolutely. Dharmesh, I know you need to go. Appreciate you for giving us the time. Everybody, check out Dharmesh. You can see his Twitter on screen, and also his link down in the description. So check him out. Appreciate you as always, mate. And myself and Pies will finish it off. And we'll talk to you soon, mate.
Yeah, big up Laurenz the Pies, big up the chat as well. See you soon, boys. In a bit.
see you, bro. See you.
Ladies and gentlemen, before myself and Pies get through a last couple of few topics, subscribe if you haven't already. I'd be massively appreciated. Hit the like button. Pies, when I read this and people say it's purely PR and he's not like that. Now, I see why in terms of it's definitely PR that he came out when he came out. I think everybody should be aware of that. But I do almost want to reference what Potter said in the press conference, like, 2 weeks ago, 10 days ago, when he said, if you think you can get here where he is without being nice and angry, then you don't know anything about anything. And that's how I believe it. You don't even stay at Östersund in a foreign country for 5 years. You don't even stay in that job for 5 years. Get them promoted every season and win the Swedish Cup and play in the Europa League. If you're only nice, you don't do what he did at Brighton. Even if some of you don't think it's good enough, still for Brighton standards, what he did there was very good. That doesn't happen by only being nice. Now, that doesn't have anything to do with him being good enough as a manager for Chelsea. But in terms of some people saying he just doesn't have the mentality, that's the part. Well, that's the part I don't fully agree with. I agree that on the sidelines, he should act slightly differently. But I thought that same thing about Frank Lampard. Frank Lampard sat there arms crossed on the sidelines. And I was like, what the fuck are you doing? But clearly no one questioned Lampard's winning mentality. So what I'm trying to say with that is how you act doesn't necessarily mean how you act in terms of what we see as fans doesn't necessarily always mean you don't have the right mentality. That's what I'm trying to say. A couple of things that I want to touch on with you, Pies, before we round this one out. I'm going to bring this one up just because it was arguably the most shocking to me. Kyle McCauley's data analysis concluded David Fofana is superior to Aubameyang in the most important metrics. What do you make of that, Pies? Because that, to me, even I'm not a fan of Aubameyang, but that even baffled me, that one.
I don't know, like most important metrics. I mean, to be fair, when they say this, it's probably not simple stuff like finishing. It's more like it's probably like sprints
and pass accuracy and whatever.
Yeah, or like Kyle McCauley. I'm sure he's got some like data that we don't even know. Like, you remember when someone brought something up in the comments the other day? They did a super chat and they were like X something, and you was like, "What the hell is that?" Like,
yeah.
Kyle McCauley probably has that for attackers. Like, probably some stat we don't even know about. Yeah. So, or some graph or whatever. But I mean, I don't know. It's interesting because, like, right now we've just kind of thought, well, Graham Potter and the board just don't really rate him. But now we've heard that, McCauley's also involved. And this could literally be why Potter's not playing him, because of Kyle McCauley. And I mean, if he trusts him, then fair enough. Why wouldn't you trust your data analysis bloke? But you do also think at certain points, right?
You should still put him on the bench, though, right?
Yeah, like we're not scoring. Like, man, I don't care if he doesn't start him. Just if we're in a game where we haven't scored, what's the harm? 15, 20 minutes.
Like, say we're 1-0 up and therefore would theoretically take it to an extra time. Not having Aubameyang on the bench for the last 10 minutes to get us a goal, it's just stupid.
It just baffles me. It just baffles me. Like,
it's stupid.
No one's saying he's amazing, but people are saying, I'm rightly saying, if we're like Southampton, I know Sterling was one who missed the chances, but like at half time or even 60 minutes, you could chuck Aubameyang on. Like, why not? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just.
To be fair, Kai did come on and made it better, but
yeah, he did. But like, have an option in those types of games where you're down or you're drawing. Like, it's just stupid. I don't understand that, but yeah.
Absolutely. We had a report yesterday. I mean, it was from the paper that shall not be named, but it did say that Todd Boehly is splashing out in a luxury chill room as Chelsea battle on-pitch crisis. The new players' lounge will include soft furnishings and possibly video games. Designers are also decorating walls with motivational phrases.
But people are cooking Boehly for this. I don't know why.
I don't know why either, bro. Like, I understand that maybe the timing isn't ideal, but in a normal world, I'm more baffled that this doesn't exist at Cobham already, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I was reading it. I mean, the only reason why I posted it is because Andy Dillon's quite good, even though he works for that newspaper. The reason why I found it quite interesting is because apparently he said in the article that right now, before the training, Chelsea players hang out in the medical centre. I was like, what? Like, do they not have anywhere to just go and sit down? Like, apparently that's what they do. They hang out in the medical centre. So this is why apparently.
To be fair, when you see like Insta stories, they are always in the medical centre, aren't they?
Yeah, and people, Boehly got cooked for this, but a few comments that rightly did say like someone was a Man City fan. I think he either commented or messaged me saying like their owner did this and the players really liked it, so they've got like their own space.
I think this is a good thing. It's just slightly unfortunate timing of the news coming out. But the news coming out isn't Boehly's fault. I'm sure Boehly didn't like plant this news. Do you know what I mean? As we know, like Pies, obviously you won't say who your sources are, but the fact that certain stories have come out to you says everything. Also sources like to, the more dramatic certain situations are, the more sources all of a sudden come out and have information, It's like the Rudiger thing after Lampard got sacked. It happens every time drama kicks off. That's just unfortunately how the footballing world runs, unfortunately. What can we say? The last thing I want to bring up, and this isn't the most latest news, I do apologize, but we haven't spoken about it on here. N'Golo Kante is close to signing a new contract. Also, N'Golo Kante is, I think, did full training for the first time today.
I think it's next week.
It might be next week.
Yeah.
But regardless, what do you think of this? I quote tweeted this by saying, well, if he keeps being injured, this is a ginormous waste of money. If he stays fit now, this is brilliant. So right now, it literally is like Schrodinger's box, or Schrodinger's cat. Not everyone else understands that reference, but it's like we don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing right now, do we, Pies?
No, literally, I don't know. The only thing that I remember being reported was that Kante was apparently going to take a wage cut. So I'd be interested to see what his new wage is, because, I don't think they would have renewed him on the same money. Apparently he was willing to take a cut. So, I mean, we've not heard anything yet about the official numbers, but, I love Kante, man. Like, selfishly, like, bro, even if he is injured for the rest of the time, just having him at Chelsea, like, I love the guy so much. Like, I said when we were talking about, him leaving and stuff like that, how it might be good business. And I agreed, but, like, sentimentally, I was just thinking, like, I can't see this guy in a fucking Arsenal shirt or something, bro. Like,
but
Kante's
neither could I or did I want to see that with Jorginho. Now I'm seeing it anyway.
No, I know. That's what I mean, man. Like, I can't see Kante. Like, the only club I was like, okay, was PSG. Anyone else, like, in the Prem, like, nah, man. Nah, Kante, I love Kante. He's done so much for the club. I didn't want to see him go.
Yeah, no, I didn't want to see him go as that either. I certainly didn't want to see him go within the country. If he went to like PSG, it wouldn't be that bothered. I will be honest.
Yeah.
But again, it all matters. It all just depends on whether he can stay fit. But I'm crossing my fingers. I know I've been very negative on this, but I'm crossing my fingers now that he's nearing the return. The fact that he had surgery, I think, as far as I'm aware, don't quote me to it, I'm no doctor, but the idea of having a hamstring surgery. So every time you tear your hamstring, you get scar tissue. And scar tissue, while the scar tissue itself is super tight, and the scar tissue itself doesn't tend to rip again, that's very unlikely. But where the scar tissue then attaches to the normal muscle around it, which is healthy, that's where it's not as stable. And that's why people that players, footballers, anyone, humans that have consistent injuries in the same muscle, that's why the more you have, the more they get. So like it's a thing that gets exponentially worse. So if you have 1 or 2, fine. But once you get 3 or 4, then you're more likely to get the 5th and the 6th and the 7th. And that's, I kind of think, again, no doctor, don't know this for sure, but that's what I think happened with Kante, where it just constantly kept getting worse and worse and worse with him, and he kept new injury, just and super quickly, because it became an easier thing to injure for him. And we also know how he plays in terms of a lot of running, a lot of sprinting. So he was always going to make himself more susceptible. But now that, and what I'm the least of an expert in, what I know the least about is what you actually do in a hamstring surgery. Like, do they remove the scar tissue and attach the rest of the healthy muscle? I think that's what they do, but I could be wrong. But the idea of a hamstring injury, I do know that, is to not only heal the current injury, but also make you less susceptible to those types of injuries in the future. So that's why I have hope that, you know, it goes well and he can actually manage to stay fit a little bit more consistently from now on. But, you know, he had surgery on one of the hamstrings. We don't know what happens with the other hamstring, I guess. But yeah, I have hope. And if we have Kante available, then we add a world-class midfielder to our team. But Pice, do you think Kante and Enzo combination works? Do you think that's because then we make Enzo again sit deep all the time if we play with Kante, no?
Yeah, no, I think it's not what we want long term. But you know, I think it certainly would. I mean, Kante midfield with anyone. I mean, he makes everyone look better. So I think does it work? I mean, yeah, it will work, but like, is it going to be elite? What we want in starting next season? No, I don't think so. I don't want Enzo deepest next season personally.
Yeah, me neither. But HM, you're a funny man. First you try to take the piss, and then you don't know anything. Yes, it started with the knee injury, but his knee hasn't been an issue ever since then. Everyone makes blaming Sarri for it, because that's what this fan base loves to do, blame Sarri for everything. But what the knee issue did is it put more strain on the hamstring, because when you have a less stable knee, your muscles around it get strained more, and that's what started the hamstring injuries, which, yes, by the end it was the hamstrings that were the issue, not the knee. But, you know, well done for taking a piss first. But Pice, I think we've come to an end at this point. Like, what can I say? I'm just stuck in the middle where I'm like, I don't think Potter is good enough, but I don't trust the ownership to, number one, pick the right replacement. Because imagine one thing now. Now imagine we don't get an Enrique or a Flick or a Pochettino, whatever else. Imagine we get some other somewhat because in the globally scene, in the Premier League, Graham Potter obviously was a name people knew. But if you ask someone from Germany, France, Spain, they would have never heard of Graham Potter before we appointed him, right? Now, imagine takes a Graham Potter style person who's not as, you know, successful in the past, doesn't have a beautiful CV. Imagine we do that because of what our fan base has just experienced with someone like that. I'm concerned that if we get someone like that again, just from elsewhere, that the fan base won't even take 4 months to flip their shit, but will flip their shit from day dot, because our fan base has been used to having top manager after top manager after top manager. No, I know, HM, it's all good. A top manager after top manager, and now we tried this a slightly less top manager type thing, and it didn't work. Now imagine if we get another slightly less top manager. Don't you think, Pice, from the get-go, the fans will be against that just because of, and that's what I'm concerned about, you know?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, Graham Bailey's not the most reliable, but he did say, like, accordingly, we sounded out Pochettino. When I heard that, I was like, oh my fucking God. Like, these owners, like, imagine they bought in Pochettino. They genuinely don't know what football club they're owning. Like,
yep. But still, at the same time, all of Chelsea fans want Harry Kane. So I'm like, well, do we hate Spurs now or not?
Nah, Harry Kane, mate, I'd love Harry Kane.
Exactly that. Yeah, exactly.
I have a bit of English bias, like you know. But yeah, I mean, I don't like him, but he's just world class. So
Yeah.
Pochettino
But-
for me isn't.
I'd still agree with that, though. I would rather Poch than Glasner, even though I don't want Poch. Even though what Glasner does with Frankfurt is actually really impressive. But I have this thing in my head as an Austrian. I'm not obviously being from a country that's not particularly known for being good at football. I mean, we haven't been to a World Cup since 1998. Says enough, that doesn't it? Any manager that's Austrian, right? We can't be that good. He's Austrian, so you know that's my auto. That's my auto just response when I say Austrian manager. Yeah, that's what worries me. And you said something about some Portuguese people. I'm like, just imagine we get some random Portuguese manager. The fan base won't react well to that, will they?
That is what concerns me though a little bit, is because you know, as much as I might not want Potter to be the manager, I might be Potter out. Like I don't want, like for me, this is like, you know, this is like the test of like you either do this with Potter or you don't. You know what I mean? Like I feel like he is like one of the best out there to do this whole like give him time no matter what with. Because if you start doing that with managers that haven't done it in the Premier League or haven't at least, you know, gone up tactically against the other Premier League managers, and they're not like the top, like they're not the Enrique, they're not, you know, the Flick, they're like an Oliver Glasner. I'm not interested in that. You know, I don't want to do this whole like.
He's at least won the Europa League, to be fair to him.
Yeah, fair enough. But like, I don't want to do this whole like, okay, Potter's gone, you know, we're doing another project manager now. Like we're doing another, like you can still have a project. Well, I hope you can with a top coach. So I don't want to do this whole like lesser coach, like smaller club, and build it up at a big club type thing. Like if Potter goes, I want it to be someone that's, you know, like that gets rival fans thinking, oh bloody hell, that's a big appointment type thing. Like when we got Tuchel, you know, like it's, you know, all the rivals were like,
it's like, I don't know, it's just like say Enrique is that example of a somewhat big manager. Barcelona, who especially at the time were not what they are right now, huge club, and they still appointed him on the back of having done nothing other than be at Roma and Celta Vigo. So why do we think we're the club that can't do that? You know, you could argue Ten Hag. Now, obviously, he's won things with Ajax, and Ajax are not a small club, and they had the Champions League semi-final run, and they should have gotten to the final as well if they didn't bottle it. But it's also a lesser league, like not exactly done things at our level. So, like, you know, I just think if we have that mindset, if we can only go for the top ones in terms of top ones by CV, I think like that we just miss out on potential super managers that we could have, a bit like we talk about with players. And I know you're saying managers and players are different, and I do see that. But at the same time, if we can't have a Pep, if we can't have a Klopp, are these other somewhat good managers like an Enrique that has had positive results, had negative results? Like a Flick that, yes, was amazing at Bayern Munich, won their first six tuple. All six trophies they could win. I think it was the second time in their history that Bayern pulled that off. And even though he did that, after 18 months, he threw in the towel and was like, yeah, I don't really want to be Bayern manager anymore. You know how you said in the group chat earlier, like, is Potter even made for this? Flick couldn't handle in his home country and after winning every trophy, and he still didn't want to like do it for longer. I don't think Flick, even at the best of times, will want to be here for more than 2 years because he couldn't hack it. Honestly, with English media, Chelsea fans, and the schedule we get in England, I think Flick would resign after 3 months, if I'm honest, if he can't handle more than 18 months at Bayern. You know what I mean? So I'm like, and again, I'm not necessarily, yes, Ajax won 4 Champions Leagues in the, 70s or even earlier. Yes, we know. Nottingham Forest is also a huge club. But you know, that's all. And again, by that, I'm not trying to say Potter is the right man, but I'm saying, should we really just look at the top managers? Like, I know I'm worried in terms of if we don't get a top manager, how the fan base will react. But that doesn't mean I will react that way.
Laurenz, it's what's engraved in Chelsea fans' brains for the last 20 years. All we've done is pretty much gone for the best, you know. If you ask any, whether it's right or wrong, I don't know. But, you know, the trophies and stuff, you can say, yeah, and then sustainable wise, you know.
But was Tuchel even that big when we got it?
Who?
Tuchel. Because
Yeah,
obviously he won one German Cup with Dortmund, and then obviously won the trophy with PSG. But everyone wins trophy with PSG.
Yeah, but I think the fans could see like he was, and to be fair, we'll never know what the reaction would have been if the fans had been in the stadium because they may have hated Tuchel because of Lampard was sacked
Yeah,
and type thing,
exactly. Yeah.
like still Tuchel for me, like when we hired him, I don't know, it's just like a presence, like a name that everyone knows, like, and
absolutely.
like the Chelsea fans obviously know who Graham Potter is. That's not what I'm saying, but it's just like if you go and ask, like if you had 100 fans outside the stadium right now, and you each asked them to write down a manager to replace Potter tomorrow morning, I guarantee you, like 80% of them would say Mourinho. Like, is that the right thing to do? Probably, absolutely not. But that's what the fans are like. That's Chelsea fans for you, and it's just.
And that's why I'm saying,
like,
just because the fans want Potter out doesn't mean I think that the owners should do that because the fans think that, because fans are
the owners are trying to what the owners are trying to do, and we will not know until it succeeds or fails. Period. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to change like the fans, not mentality, but they're trying to change the way of thinking. Like, you can go through this horrible season because next season it's going to be better. Every Chelsea fan thinks we can't we can't turn this around. Do I think we can turn it around? I'm extremely negative. I don't think we will, but can we? Of course we can. Like, we've got enough quality. Like, Potter can turn this around, but there is like all the match going fans, like all like the 50-year-olds and stuff. Like, and I'm not being even stereotypical. It's just facts. Like, they'll all think like, nah, Potter's shit. He can't turn this around. Get out, sort of thing. Like, even though I'm Potter out, I don't think that. I don't think like that. So I just think it's like a mentality thing with this fan base. It's like like.
See, and then I hear that if we got Bielsa, and what he's won a cup with Real Sociedad 15,000 years ago, and then got promoted with Leeds. Great.
No, I think Bielsa's massively overrated, to be honest. I don't think he's that great.
But then, Pep says Bielsa is the reason for why Pep plays football the way he does. It's
that's
like,
half the reason.
What if we got Gauthier from PSG? Say PSG win the league this season, blah, 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 even though they don't probably get knocked out of the Champions League. And then he's won Ligue 1 with Lille, and then he's won Ligue 1 with PSG. And then we got him. I would say in terms of match-going fans, 80% of them would have never even heard his name before.
Yeah, the match-going fans, they want someone that's a recognizable figure. That's
yeah, but see, so that's what I'm saying. It's not even about winning. It's just who they heard of, which means
Yeah.
all they judge their bases on is who Sky Sports put on their headlines.
Who's the
And
biggest
that is the
managers
problem
in the
in and of
world?
itself.
That's the thing. They want the biggest managers in the world, but sometimes we can't get all those. So
There is no biggest manager available. The biggest one available is Enrique.
yeah,
I think in terms of name,
Yeah,
unless
probably.
I guess Pochettino is bigger than Enrique, then success he certainly isn't.
yeah. If they ever hired Pochettino, I genuinely don't know what I'd do anymore. My God, bro.
Yeah. But I think some of the Chelsea fans wouldn't even be that upset after Potter, which just shows how flip-floppy a lot of them are, because a year ago they would have lost their shit to Potter.
I think they'd be shouting Potter back, mate. I think. Oh my God, bro! Spurs manager. Oh, that would not go down.
I mean, hey, I still think if we get rid of Potter, best course of action, just let Boehly write an apology letter to Tuchel. Tuchel hopefully learned a few things out in his rehab tour through India.
Bro,
Klopp said maybe I don't need to shout around like a mad person all the time, and then we can actually, move on and be successful. It's like when a couple takes a break, like in Friends. I don't know, man. I don't know. That's my problem. If we get rid of Potter, I don't fully trust in any of the next ones. But to be honest, did I trust fully in Potter when we got him? No. But if anything, I got proved right in why I didn't. As much as I backed him more than a lot of others, because I back whoever the manager is, as I always will and always do, for a certain amount of time. In the end, that's those few question marks at the beginning. At the moment, feel proven right, aren't they? Don't they not? And yeah, that's just why I'm concerned about doing the same thing again, where we will hire a manager who I don't fully trust will be the right manager, and then what? It's a tough one. It's about time we wrap this one up. We will be back tomorrow with a preview for Tottenham versus Chelsea. I'm not sure what all the things we talk about there. It might be a bit of a shorter preview stream tomorrow, just because will be less to talk about considering we talk so much today. But big shout out to Pice, as always, for giving me so much of his time. Check out his website, chelseafc365.com, for all your latest Chelsea news, sometimes even a cheeky exclusive. Even if I hope those exclusives are not true. I have to be honest. I hope they're not true. But they probably are true, which is the sad part. But anyway, check out the website, check out Pice's Twitter. And of course, if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe. To be massively appreciated. I haven't really told you guys that often enough today. So if you're still here and you haven't subscribed yet, please do hit that big red subscribe button. No, it's not red anymore, is it? Depending on device, potentially. So just hit the big subscribe button down below. Hit the like button as well. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. At the Chelsea, upwards and onwards. And we'll see you next time.